What I'd like to do is have Chris talk a little bit more and set up the kind of conceptual framework for this special coming together. Chris, I'll just do a quick introduction. Chris is a great friend, and a few years ago when we were starting to work with Fairmont, I searched the world for someone to complement our work. We were good at the large group appreciative inquiry work, but we needed someone who was a pioneer and leader and thought leader in sustainability. And I read his first book. It was called The Sustainable Company. And I called him up and he said, yes, I'll come. And I think he flew over from France or INSEAD or somewhere and joined us. And I wanted him to come here ever since. It was an incredible meeting. So he's the Chuck and Char Fowler Professor of Business as an Agent of World Benefit. He's our Executive Director of the Fowler Center. He's an author, speaker, advisor. He's a visiting professor at Claremont's Drucker School, at the Darden School, many others, PhD in economics and management science at University of Paris. And he's an incredible pioneering voice. And he's going to help us set up the theme of this conference. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, thank you, David. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. Good morning and welcome to all of you. Like David, I really am in awe of the vision and talent that is here. And I feel confident that this will be a participant-driven milestone in a business-led effort to create a better future. And actually yesterday at a dinner for another group, Chuck Fowler made reference to the fact that, yes, well, it will have to be a business-led change because, yeah, we may be having to depend on business. So, at the first Global Forum in 2006, Patrick Cheskow, then the chairman and CEO of Unilever, observed that companies that do good for society and the environment can do even better for their customers and investors. And you know what? History proved them right. Studies since then conclusively show that sustainability leaders outperform the market average. In many cases, 6% or higher, especially when they use the sustainability asset management criteria of materiality. So it's pretty clear today that the business case is there. But equally important is that there are global surveys showing that over 80% of CEOs in 40 countries now recognize that sustainability is critical to competitive advantage. This kind of progress is hugely encouraging, but I want to suggest to you this morning that it's also very misleading. And that's because economic activity at the aggregate level is actually continuing to worsen many environmental and social problems. So let's just take climate change and social inequality. We know carbon emissions are continuing to grow worldwide and are now at 410 parts per million in the atmosphere worldwide, which this is the first time in history, in recorded history, that we've hit 410 just this last month. And it's well above the 350 parts per million that scientists have concluded is the upper limit for us to avoid catastrophic climate change. In terms of social inequality, the gap between rich and poor continues to grow. And that's true both within countries and between countries. In fact, in January of this year, Oxfam released a study at Davos showing that a group of 8 men, and yes, they are all men, have as much wealth as half of the world's population. So again, I just want to make sure we all heard this because it's such a surprising fact. 8 individuals as a group own as much wealth as 3.6 billion people. And unfortunately, many of these problems are only getting worse when national governments pull back from their environmental and social responsibilities, when they withdraw from international agreements such as the Paris Climate Accord, or when they close their borders to immigrants. So the opportunity for business, what is the opportunity for business? It is to go beyond corporate sustainability as it is practiced today. So let me be very clear here in this next piece. Corporate sustainability as it's currently practiced is making a difference. And it's an important step in leading the transformation of business in the right world. It's what Hunter has often referred to as the bottom rungs of the ladder that we all need to climb up on to get to the higher levels. But I think we can, in this room today, at this point in history, recognize that it's not yet producing the results we all want. And the reason for that is because corporate sustainability, as it's currently practiced, remains primarily focused on reducing the environmental footprint of business, on reducing the ecological footprint, or on minimizing social harm. So this is not the case for all companies, and you know, it is a spectrum. But there is a direction here in which, what is business doing when it's reducing footprints and minimizing harm? It's reducing the rate of harm, which is not the same thing as doing good. So if in this direction we're going towards minimizing harm, this direction is about doing good, okay? And flourishing enterprise, by contrast to corporate sustainability as it's often practiced, is by design set up to make a positive impact. That is, flourishing enterprises create prosperity for all, or they create prosperity in the communities in which they work, not just short-term profits for their owners. They contribute to a healthy, regenerative environment, not just reducing their footprint, and they're there to improve human well-being. So in this direction, flourishing enterprise; in that direction, corporate sustainability. And what I think is perhaps, we're here in a management school, right? And so it's good to talk about ideals for a better role for society and the world. But what I really want to underline for all of us here is that flourishing enterprise, when it's done right, is able to drive innovation and attract investors and motivate talented employees and gain loyal customers who increasingly expect brands and products and services to have some kind of societal benefit. In other words, this is no longer simply about being green or socially responsible. In fact, this is about smarter business models and better product designs. And I want to go back to the example that David raised, the example of Tesla. So Tesla actually overtook General Motors and Ford in April of this year in terms of market capitalization. That means the value of Tesla, the company, is now worth more than General Motors, say. Now, just to give you a clear sense of what's going on here, General Motors in 2016 sold 10 million cars. Tesla sold 76,000. So you have a situation here where two in the same industry, right? General Motors is selling 130 times more cars than Tesla, but it's worth $8 billion less. Okay? All right, so those are the facts. Now ask yourself this: why is it that people go and buy a Tesla car or invest in Tesla stock? Do you think that it's because Tesla is selling green cars or socially responsible cars? No. I think there's a lot of clear evidence that people buy Tesla cars because they are better cars, and because sustainability or environmental performance is simply designed into the overall value proposition. And in the same way, people invest in Tesla stock simply because it's a better financial play. And again, sustainability was written into this company's mission in 2003 by Elon Musk. If you look at that original mission statement for the company, sustainability was front and center, okay? But again, it wasn't this overlay. It was part of a smarter thing that was more relevant to the times. And it's not only, I'm happy to say, the splashy front page stories of a Tesla or Unilever either. There are thousands, tens of thousands of flourishing enterprises emerging in the world today. And starting right here, with KeyBank, with Fairmount Central, Clark, Vitamix, Greystone, and many other companies many of you who are here today. But unfortunately, the vast majority of flourishing enterprise stories remain hidden from public view. And this is where Aim to Flourish is doing this incredible work to uncover these examples of for-profit businesses that are contributing in some way to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Through this network of students and faculty members now in over 100 business schools and 60 countries. This is the first and most pioneering effort of its kind to use this network, which in the process transforms the students and the leaders and the professors who are involved in this process. So at so many levels, Aim to Flourish is really moving the needle out in the field. And I'd like to suggest we all give them a round of applause for Aim to Flourish. Now, many people ask, quite legitimately, so what is different about flourishing enterprises relative to other forms of business for good? I mean, we have B corporations, we have conscious capitalism, we have firms of endearment, we have very many other forms of social entrepreneurship. And let me be the first to say, this is not a competition. They're all doing fantastic things to move the needle or to move us towards a tipping point in making business really relevant to the needs of society and the situation that humans and all life face on Earth. But I do want to make one distinction. Many of these other forms of business are largely founded on what I call the external or outer transformation of markets that now expect higher social and environmental performance from businesses. There's a rising standard in the markets, so that's an outside kind of thing. And there's a rising demand for accountability and for transparency, right? We see this in the marketplace. Flourishing enterprises do all that as well, but they go further in one important respect. They embrace the inner transformation of business leaders. That is, there's a focus on the change in global mindset that we need to have in business. And when I say business leaders, I don't mean the C-suite. I mean anyone at any level in an organization who is interested in leading in some way themselves, their organization, their industry forward. So what is this change in consciousness that is happening now? It's a change in consciousness worldwide to see ourselves, instead of seeing ourselves separate and selfish, utility maximizing individuals, which has been sort of the story of the last few hundred years, there is a shift going on now in mindset around the world, and you could hear it in David speaking this morning, to seeing the world in relational terms, to seeing the world as deeply connected to others and to nature and to future generations. And when you have such inner transformation, you are able to experience compassion and empathy more intrinsically, rather than only relying on sort of a financial calculation for doing good. Now, I'm happy to say that there's some great research that we're doing here at the Fowler Center working together with the ITIA Institute in Shanghai. That's AITIA, which I believe in Greek means cause or responsibility. Did I get that right? What? Root cause. Root cause. They have been doing great work for decades in this area and drawing on a lot of Eastern wisdom that is now converging on Western science. And what we're finding is that this research, it's a multi-year research effort, is helping us show that there are practices that each of us can have in our lives to increase our consciousness of connectedness, to increase our awareness of how our actions impact others in our life on earth. These can be Eastern ideas of mindfulness meditation, but they can equally be walking in nature, music, exercise, gardening, and you know what? Many, many other types of routines and practices that we all need in today's world that tends to divide us. We need these practices that can make us whole and in a way heal us in a world that divides us. And when we have this experience of connectedness, so it's not just a cognitive thing, it's not something you learn through words, you experience through these practices what it is like to be deeply connected to yourself, others, nature, and future generations. When you have that experience, that changes how you think and act. And then doing good becomes something that you do from this more authentic place. So this inner transformation of business leaders towards wholeness and connectedness, and the outer transformation of business to creating sustainable value are both needed if we want to create a world of prosperity and flourishing. The time to shift the role of business is now. And we have an extraordinary opportunity to take this idea of flourishing enterprise, this model of flourishing enterprise, and make it widely accessible and widely appealing. And you know why it's going to be so successful and so appealing? Because it offers business around the world the opportunity to create economic value in a way that's consistent with greater purpose, the kind of greater purpose that we're called on to have at this point in history. And so being part of this effort will allow us all to, each of us, contribute to the kind of world that David talked about towards the end of his talk, that is a world in which business prospers, human beings experience well-being, and nature thrives. So, an extraordinary opportunity ahead of us. I want to wish all of you a fantastic forum experience, and remember the potential that you, we, all of us have to make a huge difference in the years ahead. Thank you.